buckle up because I think this is going to be a long video. I have a lot to say on this topic, and I have a lot of life experience in this realm. You know what they say, I feel like your biggest challenges end up becoming your largest strengths if you get through them. That's not what they say, I just made that up. But basically what I'm trying to say is your hardest struggles and your biggest challenges teach you the most, and they make you better, stronger, and your healing becomes your gift not only to yourself but the world if you take that and you share it with the world. So here I am today sharing with you my deepest, darkest struggle. It used to be my deepest, darkest secret. I used to think I had this crazy secret about myself, but over time I have shared things here and there about my struggle with OCD, or if you guys don't know, obsessive compulsive disorder. I've had it severely over half my life at this point, but I think I struggled with it even prior to when it really hit me almost overnight. And I've been sharing recently about my struggle with this on Snapchat, and that's what inspired me to make this video for you guys, because I've realized more and more how not alone that I am in this struggle, and I just want to put my experience out there with you so that you feel less alone. Maybe this can give you some hope, because I'm at a place in my life where I feel the most hopeful about overcoming and healing and getting through this disorder than I ever have in my entire life, and that is due to a myriad of things that I will share with you. But for the longest time I kind of thought this was just a life sentence for me, like this is how my life is going to be forever, so let me figure out how to cope and still live my life to the fullest, but like cope along the way. And now I'm at a place where I feel like there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and I don't feel like my life is going to be subject to only coping. I feel like there is healing in my future if I choose to allow it and let it in and put my full commitment and energy towards healing. And if I can do that, which I am going to do that, then so can you. Hi, it's Julia. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you're new here. Clearly this video is all about my experience with OCD for over half my life, and the challenges that I have gone through, and the treatment that I'm looking into. And I'm also going to share with you some content that I have recently watched to help me understand this mental disorder, because I think a lot of us who experience OCD and the disordered thoughts and compulsions from it, we don't fully understand why we're doing what we're doing, why we can't stop, why it's so life-consuming, and what the treatment options are. So I've really been looking into that. Obviously, like, I am new to researching treatments and anything and everything about OCD. I've kind of tried to avoid this for years and years and years, and that's sort of part of the OCD, is like to avoid. So just having this disorder in general can make it really hard for you to even want to heal, just by how mentally consuming and draining that it is by nature. And I think I've gotten to a place through doing other forms of therapy, through overcoming other disorders, and opening up my mind through meditation, plant medicine, and other means of just watching content that are more mind-opening. I have gotten to a place where I am open to seeing what forms of treatment are out there, actually taking a look at what this OCD is within me that I'm experiencing, so that I can try to understand it to heal it, because this is a process. And honestly, I feel like this is one of the most challenging things that I have ever had to deal with in my entire life. Just in full transparency, I am sharing my experience and what I figured out. I'm not any person in the medical field. I cannot give you advice on treatments. I can only give you the information that I have found and my own experience thus far. So that being said, let me give you some backstory on my experience with OCD and just a little brief synopsis of my past with this disorder. So my earliest memory of having symptoms, I guess you could say, of OCD was being 3 years old and having a very, very extreme bug phobia that's not what the normal 3-year-old would have. At this point, no one knew it was OCD. I didn't know it was OCD. It was just being experienced as an extreme bug phobia. But I remember being 3 years old at my first day camp, screaming, crying, being extremely upset about stepping in the grass barefoot because I didn't want to step on any bugs. That continued throughout my entire childhood. I was never okay with walking around outside in grass specifically, but also like pavement as well, barefoot, because I was afraid of stepping on an ant, but any bug really. I just would see ants the most, and I remember ants. So I was okay walking barefoot inside. I was okay walking barefoot on the beach. I couldn't really see ants there, or bugs for that matter, but I could not walk barefoot in the grass. I also could not sit in the grass, and it made day camps, which I went to many, a nightmare for me because I was so hyper fixated on the bugs. I would have trouble socializing and making friends. I genuinely just did not like camp because of all my fears of bugs and being in a place where no one knew what to do to help me with this. Why would they? It's not their job or their problem. So that was my first experience with what later led to a full-blown OCD experience. But at the time, it was just a bug phobia. Then when I got to, I would say around 12 years old, I started to develop more, I guess, germophobia side effects. At this point, I still didn't know that it was OCD, but the bug phobia turned into germophobia. I continued to have the bug phobia throughout my childhood, and then when I got to 12 years old, it turned into being afraid of touching toilets, sitting on toilets, doorknobs, a lot more things that I can't really remember. But if you could picture germophobia, that was me. I was germophobic, and I didn't know why. That was the other part, is like a lot of people who experience OCD, they'll know why they're doing the compulsion. Like, for example, let's say I'm afraid that touching the doorknob is going to cause me to get sick and then die. That was not my fear. My fear was I'm going to touch the doorknob and my hand is going to be disgusting, and I don't want my hand to be disgusting, because if my hand is disgusting, I'm disgusting. But I didn't think it through that way. I was just like, my hand is disgusting. I never really allowed myself to think of it too much further. I would just go and wash my hands. So that started slowly but surely to build. I would wash my shoes every day. I would take these hour-long showers. I just became obsessed with making sure everything wasn't contaminated with outside germs, in a sense. And then during that year that I was 12 years old, I broke my ankle and I had a full leg cast. And that was on my leg for 6 weeks. And in that 6 week span, the OCD symptoms just kept increasing and increasing. And especially because I couldn't shower like easily or properly, it exacerbated and made it even worse. And then even when I got the cast taken off, I still had all these phobias and obsessions and compulsions that I had to do. And as I would build on the obsession, I would then build on the compulsion, and I would have many rituals that I would have to do. If I touched a certain thing, I would have to wash my hands. If I sat on something that I deemed dirty, I would have to change my clothes. And this kept going. Same with the bug phobia. I got to a place where I wasn't even sleeping in my own bed anymore because I was afraid that there were bugs in my bed. So I would sleep on the sofa because I felt like I could see if there were bugs easier. And that lasted me a while. I remember the summer when I turned 13 going into high school, I basically self-isolated. I went to summer school, went home, didn't see anyone, wasn't social. It was a really tough time. And then when I got to high school, I was able to compartmentalize a lot of the fears just to try to function normally in high school and allow myself to have, I guess, a normal high school experience. I still had all of my phobias, but I was kind of able to maintain them without anything getting worse for the most part. There were a few things that I added on that I didn't realize were part of the OCD, but in hindsight, looking back, I'm like, oh, that makes sense. That was definitely a part of the OCD. So I maintained through high school, functioning pretty normally. Yes, I had all my phobias and this and that, but I was like, I just need to get through high school. There was also a part of me, and I think this was my 12-year-old self thinking this, that like, I'm not gonna make it past 18. I don't know how to function as a normal human in this world anymore. I don't know how I'll be able to do it without people taking care of me, like my parents and this and that. Like, how will I ever get a job? How will I ever do this? How will I ever do that? And I think a lot of that lit a fire under my booty to do YouTube and make money at an early age. I don't think I knew knew that YouTube was going to turn into a career fully, but I think I had hopes in the back of my mind. This was before like YouTube was even that popular and everyone was monetized. The most I thought I could do would be to make $100 a month, and to me at the time, being 12, not 12, what was I? I was 15 when I started, so my 15-year-old self thinking $100 a month, like, let's just keep doing this and see where it goes. But I would say through high school, YouTube was my safe place, my happy place, the place I would go to feel good. And honestly, not to sound extreme, I think YouTube saved my life. I think my ability to make a career for myself outside of the normal world on YouTube, where I could be dealing with all these OCD things and not have it affect my career. I mean, obviously it affects everything, but not have it affect how I work, helped me a lot. I don't know how to explain that properly, but again, I just feel like I was very blessed to have found YouTube when I did during such a really hard time. That's all I can say on that for now. So towards the end of high school, I actually ended up developing an eating disorder on top of the OCD, and I partially think that caused me to hyperfixate more on the eating disorder than the OCD. Like the OCD, everything was still running in the background, like how it always had been, but my mind was more focused on food and restricting food because of the eating disorder. So I wasn't adding on new compulsions and obsessions. I was just maintaining the ones I already had, and I was focused on restricting food. I ended up healing the eating disorder, I think 3 or 4 years after it developed, when I was living in California. And I feel like I had a stretch of time from healing the eating disorder till I moved back. It was about a 4-year stretch where I really wasn't adding on any more obsessions or compulsions. I was still maintaining the ones I already had. I mean, I think I probably added on a few here and there, I'm not gonna lie, but not enough for me to be like, this is getting worse. It was more like, okay, I'm maintaining and I'm healed from my eating disorder. I'm doing pretty well. Then I moved back home like 6 months before the pandemic, and that is when things started to increase, but I really wasn't aware of it. So I did start to add on some more obsessions and compulsions slowly at this point. I ended up getting into a really toxic, unhealthy relationship, and that went on for 3 years throughout the pandemic up until mid 2022. So in that little span of like 3 to 4 years, that's when I noticed the obsessions and compulsions slowly increasing more and more and more until now, where I'm like, oh my goodness, I wasn't realizing it as it was happening, but now I'm looking back and I'm like, I just added on so many more obsessions, so many more compulsions, and I need help. But it wasn't until I was able to get out of my unhealthy and toxic relationship that I had the space to even consider healing this, because at the time I was just trying to be okay emotionally, mentally, physically, from everything that I had went through in that relationship, because that took a huge toll on my nervous system, on my emotions. It created a bunch of new traumas and triggers that I've had to heal from, that I'm still healing from, that I'm sure I'll keep healing from as time goes on. And as I partner with somebody new, I'll have to relearn so many things and heal from that. But now that I'm out of it, my focus has really lifted and I feel free from that experience, and I feel like I have healed a lot there. But because I am able to have that freedom from the emotional stress that I was experiencing there, now I'm able to look back and really reflect on the OCD that I was ignoring the whole time that I was dealing with everything else. And that brings me to here where I'm like, okay, I added on so many more obsessions and compulsions that if I keep adding to this, I am going to end up completely isolating myself from the entire world, and I don't want that. Nobody wants that, obviously. So being able to reflect on the increase of symptoms that I've been having and realize that it is getting worse, and that I do have the mental capacity and space to actually look into healing now, is what has opened me up to considering treatment. That's not the only thing, but it's definitely one of the reasons that I'm now not necessarily coming clean about this, because it's not a secret. I've been pretty open about experiencing OCD for a while. I just don't talk about it that often. I have shared it on my YouTube channel 10 plus years ago, but I've never went in depth, and I've never really held myself accountable with this, because I didn't believe that I could be different, and I didn't believe that I could heal and do things different. So I liked to keep it in the shadows, keep it hidden, because I feel like the more I speak about it and the more I share it, the more I have to hold myself accountable to change. And that is the hardest part, is the actual committing to the change, because I think the minute I commit is the minute I change. That's how I work. Not everyone's like that. I know when I committed to healing my eating disorder, that was the minute I healed. And when I look back at how I healed my eating disorder, I have a feeling that that was the blueprint that I needed for how I'm going to go about healing the OCD. Although with healing the OCD, I probably will need some more professional help that I didn't have with the eating disorder, but who knows? I don't know. I'm not there yet. But the reasons why I feel like it's been so hard for me to even be open to treatment, and I feel like a lot of people who have OCD can relate. I'm sure if you are watching this and you have experienced OCD, you can definitely relate, but it's the shame and the guilt that I have around it. I keep it hidden because I don't want people to, I guess, judge me for it. I don't want people to witness me doing compulsions. It's not that I don't want people to know that I have it, because I'm okay with telling people that I have OCD, but where I feel really uncomfortable is when somebody asks me, well, what's one of the things that you do that would be considered OCD? I'll give them an example that they'll never ever catch me doing, because I don't want them to witness me in the act of it. And I felt the same way with my eating disorder. Like, I would never admit to having it, even though I knew I had an eating disorder. I didn't want people to witness me restricting my food or skipping meals. I would always make excuses for it. I don't know why I felt so much guilt and shame, but I did for both of these things. And I feel like that can make it a lot harder to feel like you have people supporting you and feel like you're not alone when you are keeping all these really difficult things to yourself. So I haven't figured out why I feel so much guilt and shame around this completely. I know when I was younger, like, sometimes my family would see me doing compulsions and it was like, why are you doing that? And I couldn't really give them a reason, and that would make me feel bad. But other than that, I'm not really sure. So that's something I got to think about more. Another thing is that for the longest time, I felt like there was no way to stop it. Like, I didn't even realize that I could get help. I guess I knew I could get help, but I just didn't think the help would work. But this was me assuming something without even trying it. And I think what changed my mind about the treatment actually working is that I went through therapy for something else and learned a bunch of skills within that therapy that actually did help me heal from what I was going through in that situation with my toxic relationship and all the anxiety that I developed from that. Being able to use all the skills that I learned in DBT therapy and actually see them work has opened my eyes to the fact that maybe if I do a specific skills-based therapy around the OCD, that could potentially help me to heal it, just because I know that other skills-based therapy has helped me heal other things in the past. That has given me a little bit more confidence to believe that it is possible to heal, whereas before I had ever done therapy, how would I have known it would work or not work? I didn't know, and I assumed that it wouldn't, which isn't a great assumption to have. But I think there were also a lot of people around me that thought therapy was a waste of money, or that it didn't really do anything, that it wasn't helpful. But I think if you do a specific skills-based therapy, if you use the skills, they're there for a reason. You're bound to have some type of results or relief in some type of way that is probably healthier than not. And that's been my experience. My camera died, so I need to put a new battery in, but we're back. So another thing that made it really hard for me to even consider treatment was I kept avoiding researching OCD treatments, anything related to OCD, because thinking about OCD and my experience with it in general, for some reason, tends to make my symptoms a little worse. I don't know why, I don't know the reasoning behind that, but I know that avoidance can be a part of OCD, just avoiding making the symptoms worse. So I think that was sort of like me acting on an OCD symptom per se, not quite, but it was like kind of layers of OCD going. And by avoiding even looking into treatments and other people's experiences and researching it, how am I going to get better if I'm not even looking into getting better? So recently, I would say the past 2 weeks, I've really made myself, not even 2 weeks, I feel like a week, I've really made myself, like forced myself to look into this disorder. And again, I have looked into it in the past, but I'm really like, no, Julia, you're gonna look into not only this disorder, but you're gonna look into the treatment options, and you're going to pick something and you're going to do it sooner rather than later because you keep putting it off. I've had this goal for myself the past year to actually, it's been on my to-do list to research OCD treatment, we're more than halfway through the year. We're 9 months into the year at this point. I'm finally doing it, but hey, I'm doing it, so pats for me. I've had it on my vision board at least for the past 2 years to heal my OCD, so I'm finally getting somewhere. I feel like the more momentum, the more compounding, the quicker the changes will be, but it is slow to get myself there. Oh my god, I completely forgot to tell you how I found out I had OCD in the first place. I was 12 or 13. I knew I was like genuinely not okay. Like I knew I had something wrong with my brain because I saw all the other kids and my family members and I'm like, I am malfunctioning. And I saw an Oprah episode. I don't remember which came first, my doctor or the Oprah, but I think it was the Oprah. They had a whole segment on OCD, and I think it was contamination, disgust-based OCD, which is the form of OCD that I have. Like any of my thoughts around this, fears around this, is 100% around the emotion of disgust and contamination, but the emotion behind the contamination fear is disgust. I don't know how to process disgust. I don't know how to handle the feeling of disgust, and that is where all of my compulsions come from. I can get anxiety around doing something that I know is going to cause me to feel disgust. Basically everything I do, all the compulsions and everything, is for me to avoid feeling the feeling of disgust. That is the furthest that I've gotten on understanding my specific case of OCD, and I've only figured this out in the past few weeks. I didn't even know disgust was an emotion until probably the past few months when I was like, oh my god, that is what I've been avoiding, is feeling disgust. Why? I don't know. I haven't gotten that far yet, but it makes sense why I didn't even know what disgust was to feel that emotion, because I don't even let myself feel it. Like I feel it for a second and then compulsion. I don't process it, I don't express it, I do a compulsion not to feel it. There's so many different forms and it could be around different emotions, but a lot of people feel anxiety and they do things so they don't feel anxiety, and I can get like that as well, but I usually feel that in other areas of my life. And the DBT therapy that I have done recently has helped me accept the feeling of anxiety, and that has helped me so much. Not that I like to feel it, no one likes to feel it, but I can accept it. I can't accept disgust yet, but as soon as I can, I think that's when I feel healed, because it's the thoughts and the feelings, it's never the actual thing. So where was I in this? I'm off topic, I'm off track. Back to Oprah. Oh, this is what scared me off of getting treatment. I must have watched the Oprah episode first before the doctor. This makes so much sense. They showed people doing exposure therapy to heal the OCD. So they had them touch toilets, lick toilets, and again, toilets were and still are a like disgust thing for me that I do not want to touch. And so seeing people do that completely turned me off of treatment, because I was like, there's no way that I am going to lick a toilet. Never. Can't. Then when I ended up going to the doctor, and they were describing the OCD as like a spider web spiral of thoughts that keep getting bigger and bigger and you keep collecting them. She was just explaining what OCD was to me in a picture format, which was very spot on, I will say. This was before it ever even really fully escalated to the point where it is now, but in hindsight, looking back, I'm like, oh, that's why you need to get treatment as soon as possible, because it gets worse. But I was like, no, I don't think I want to do treatment, and my parents were like, well, she said no, so we're not doing it. And so that's where I am now. But I think that's why I was so afraid of doing the CBT exposure and response therapy, because I saw the Oprah episode, self-diagnosed myself, then went to the doctor, they diagnosed me, and I was like, oh hell no, I'm not doing that. But then I never got better. So do I wish I could go back in time and do the therapy? Yeah, definitely, but we don't have time machines and we can't go back in time. So the only thing we can do is do what we can do now to get better now. And who knows, maybe the therapy wouldn't have even worked back then and I would still be here today doing this. I feel like every life experience I had leading up to this point is what has brought me to the place where I feel like ready to even consider treatment, versus back then where I hadn't had as much life experience, I hadn't gone through as many tough things that I have gone through now, that I've gotten through and healed from, to the place where I have the confidence to believe that I can heal. Anyway, so let's get into all the things that have made me way more open to therapy than I've ever been in the past, because to be honest, like I said earlier, I felt like this was a life sentence. Like this is what my life is going to be forever. And then slowly over time, I started to see the OCD as more of like, okay, this is a challenge that I have to overcome in life. and then eventually will get to be my superpower because I healed from something that I just thought I would never be able to heal from. I went from thinking that way of being stuck with this forever to, okay, like I will heal this. So the thing that has probably opened up my mind or stretched my mind per se the most was my experience with a specific plant medicine, a mushroom, and the relief I felt from that experience. Just to give you a little brief synopsis, because I feel like this could end up being a whole video in and of itself. I had the intention when I took the mushroom almost a year ago at this point to heal my OCD. Did it heal my OCD in that one experience with it? No. But it expanded my mind so much to the point where I dissolved my ego and forgot I even had OCD. So I was able to do things like I literally went and sat on a toilet in this state. And I was like, oh, why was I ever scared of this? Like, I'm fine. And so I experienced a brief moment of relief from the OCD while in that altered state. As I integrated back into myself, all of my fears, all of my phobias, all of the OCD came back with it. And so I can't say that healed me from the OCD because it didn't. I came back to who I was before. But I do remember the experience of that, and it did do something to my brain in a positive way. Yes, it didn't completely heal me, but it showed me a brief moment of what it would be like to not have the fears anymore, which has been a guiding light for me to want to heal, because I'm like, if I can experience that at least a little bit, how amazing would it feel to experience that all the time forever? So that is one of the most recent things that has really opened me up. Also, realizing how much worse it has gotten in the past 3 to 4 years and not wanting it to get any worse, because I can kind of look into the trajectory of my future if I don't heal this, and it's looking pretty bleak. And then I can also look into the trajectory of my future if I do heal this, and that looks pretty bright. Next has been this past week, but being more open to talking about it, being more open to sharing the actual thoughts and compulsions that I have with people. I talked about it in the most depth that I've ever talked about it with anyone recently, with one of my friends, and I was like, oh, this is genuinely very uncomfortable, but I'm okay. I think that is helping. Sharing it with you guys is helping, and then just like talking to myself about it and being like, you can do this, Julia, is helping. So I think letting go of the layers of shame and guilt around it is definitely helping me to lean into potential treatment. Next is picturing how I would feel and how life would be healed, and that is basically what I said about looking into the trajectory of a brighter future without all of these fears and phobias and obsessions and compulsions. How nice life would be, because I live a really, really amazing life even with this disorder. So how much better can it get without it? Like, the options are endless here. Then also the research I've been doing and watching videos on how other people have healed. It's kind of like, you know, the 4-minute mile. Everyone thought it was impossible until one person did it. So I liken it to that. It's like, okay, this is obviously not impossible to heal if other people have healed. And last is thinking back on how I healed my eating disorder and how I healed from a toxic relationship. Those two things I thought I'd never be able to heal from. I healed from both of them and never went back. So I feel like if I can do that with 2 other hard things that I've dealt with in life and never go back on it, I think I can do this with this as well. I actually think that part of the reason I had to go through my eating disorder and heal from it, and having to go through a really toxic and unhealthy relationship and heal from it, has actually given me the tools to heal something that feels even more difficult than those 2 things. I don't know if this is going to be more difficult to heal from or not, but judging by how much of a toll this has taken on me mentally, emotionally, and physically in my life, I think those situations that I healed from were necessary for me to go through to get to this point, to give me the tools, to give me the confidence, to give me the blueprints that I need to be able to remind myself of when I am healing from this and treating this and being committed to the bright future as opposed to the bleak future of staying the way I am now and allowing it to get worse over time. Okay, now let's get into the treatment that I've been looking into. So the most effective treatment treatment that I've come across so far is the cognitive behavioral exposure therapy. Again, I haven't looked too much into that. I haven't looked into that extensively yet, but that seems to be the most effective treatment. Although unfortunately, it doesn't have a super high success rate compared to other disorders and other treatments. But regardless, that seems to be the highest success rate of treatments when it comes to OCD. So that's definitely one of the treatments I will be considering doing, the number one at least. And then anything else would be a caveat with that, but that would be first and foremost, I feel like, the most important treatment for me to consider doing. And I liken it to the DBT therapy that I did in my past, because that has offered me so many skills to use for emotion regulation and interpersonal relating and conflict with other people that I have really stuck to and use daily to make my life so much easier and better, and all my relationships and connections all that much better. So I think that just by having the CBT and exposure-based therapy skills, I can implement that into healing this OCD just the same way I have done with the DBT therapy in healing after my toxic, unhealthy relationship. I'm also going to look into holistic treatments of supplements and whatever else comes along with that, because I really do like to try to approach anything that I want to heal from, anything in life, from a more holistic viewpoint. I think that leads to usually better results and can help get closer to the root of the problem when you look at things more holistically. I am possibly considering doing a clinical trial with microdosing or mushrooms because of my experience last year with mushrooms and how effective that was at giving me a moment of relief from the OCD. And then last, I am not considering any SSRIs as of right now. That's sort of like a last resort for me, but at the same time, I don't want to become dependent on a pill that has a lot of adverse side effects. So I feel like if I can avoid having to take them, I will. I've always kind of felt that way about it. So that's still my stance on that as of right now. And last, for any of you guys who are also dealing with OCD, or you have a family member or someone really close to you dealing with this disorder, I really want to recommend that you watch the Huberman podcast on obsessive compulsive disorder. It is probably the most informative video that I've watched on the disorder as a whole, and he talks about a bunch of different treatments, whether it's plant medicine treatments, SSRIs, CBT therapy, and also the holistic options as well. That has sort of given me a little bit of hope by watching that podcast, because I feel like he described the obsessions and compulsions very well, and he also described the treatment options that are available to us widely right now. I'm gonna link that in the description below, and I will keep you up to date with what I end up doing with this, and if I end up doing anything with this, I don't know. I can't say for sure because this has been a battle for me for so long. I do feel very hopeful about where I am right now and my willingness to consider treatment, but at the same time, I don't want to commit to this publicly for you guys and say I'm going to do all these things and then not do them if I don't do them. So yeah, I'm just gonna keep you updated with my situation and how things go from here. I love you guys so much. You are not alone, and we will get through this together, whatever it may be that we're going through, and I will see you in my next video next week. Bye!